Welcome, everyone, to the SAG-AFTRA podcast. I am David White, National Executive Director of SAG-AFTRA, and I will be flying solo today without Gabrielle Carteris, who is off working. So we will try to do this without her. This is a very exciting episode, however. I was going to say that we are with radio DJs, but I have already been corrected. We are with radio hosts and radio personalities. I think there may be a little difference of opinion about what you all call yourselves. So for anyone who listens to radio, and depending on your definition of radio, we all listen to radio, and that's one of the things we'll talk about, the changing nature of radio with streaming and podcasts and things of that nature. But these voices are very familiar, and we will not only learn about their backgrounds, but we'll learn a little bit about what it takes to make it in this profession. So we have with us two of the best in the business. Let me begin with Gary Bryan, a highly esteemed broadcaster who hosts the #1 radio show in Los Angeles right now, the Gary Bryan Morning Show on K-Earth 101. Gary also hosts the syndicated show Dick Clark Presents Rewind with Gary Bryan. Gary, welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here. And we are also joined by Deborah Howell, host of the popular show The No Stress Express on 94.7 The Wave, one of my favorite radio stations here in Los Angeles.
You could prove it by singing the jingle.
94.7 The Wave.
Now I believe you.
Listen to that wave voice.
You realize they are going to have to cut that one out. Otherwise, no one will be listening to this any further. And Deborah also hosts the SoCal Honda Soundstage series, which features live performances from top artists. So, origin stories. We always want to hear how you got into the business, why you got into the business. What was the unique path that brings you to us here today?
So I was a Navy brat, and I grew up all over the country. And I went to high school up in Seattle. When I was 17, graduated from high school, my dad retired down to a small town in Georgia near Augusta. And after staying in Seattle for about 6 months, I went down and joined him. I'm driving through this small town called Thompson one day, and I hear a radio station, and the guy in the radio station was so bad. You know, I didn't dream of being a disc jockey. A lot of people do, and that's cool. But I was a musician. I wanted to play rock and roll. But I'm driving through this town. I hear this guy, he's so bad. I said, I could do better than that. And being 17 and not knowing I couldn't do it, I went to a phone booth, found the address of the station, walked in. It was in a white frame building. If you've ever seen Oh Brother, Where Art Thou?
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
That was the radio station. You know, it was just like that. So I walked in and I said, hey, do you need anybody? And the guy said, can you read? I said, yeah, I'm from Seattle. I can read. You know, so he gave me
That's the definition of Seattle.
Yeah, as opposed to people from Thompson, Georgia. So he gave me a commercial, he gave me a news story, and I read them, and he said, well, come back tomorrow. The next day I was on the air for 5 hours.
Wow.
As my friend Scott Shannon would say, finally found something you can do.
Wow. You were 17?
17.
So, Deborah, did you have that type of chutzpah and arrogance when you were 17?
Not at all. But I did dream of being Larry King. You know, I was the transistor under the pillow listening to Larry King, broadcasting from, I think, Chicago. We picked him up at night only on my little transistor in Minneapolis. But I knew it was impossible because there were no women on the radio.
Sure.
So it was just like, oh, God, wouldn't that be, I mean, to get to interview people and to be on the radio. But it'll never happen, so I'll do other stuff. So I went to college. I went to Northwestern in Chicago, and my roommate got sick. And she said, oh, my God, Deborah, I have the flu. You have got to go do my radio show. I'm like, I don't even know how to turn on the microphone. I cannot do your radio show. She said, just go. They'll teach you everything. So I went. And I turned the mic on. They put the headphones on me. I did an hour show called Radioactivity on WNUR in Chicago, Evanston, really. I took the headphones off after an hour, and I said, that's it. This is it. This is why I was born. I said, I'll never make it on a commercial station, but maybe I can just work for WNUR for the rest of my life. And that was it.
Is that right?
Yeah.
So what year were you?
I was
in
a sophomore.
College? And Evanston is pretty big campus, in my view, because I went to a small liberal arts college. So that's kind of intimidating.
Well, the thing about it is if you had a French class on North Campus and you lived on South Campus and you had a 9 o'clock class, you're not going to get there. So I had to just dump out of the French class because I knew I'd never get there in February in the blizzards by 9 in the morning when I'm at, like a mile and a half away. It's just not happening. So I changed majors. And this is so weird. I went into, you're not going to believe this, but Russian philosophy and poli-sci. Into communications because I didn't have to have the language requirement.
Is that right?
And how weird is that? That in communications, you don't need the language requirement. So anyway, that's why I became a communications major, and then it all started making sense.
So we got the first job. How do you transition from the first job in a small market into your next job and then begin to grow into the personality and the force that you've been able to grow into professionally?
Mm-hmm. Well, I had a friend who knew somebody at a station called WAUG in Augusta, and it was an AM and FM station. It was a full-time FM and a daytime AM. So he put in a good word for me, and at the age of 20, I was on the air in Augusta. That was a wild station. Radio in those days was just nuts. These companies would have 1 or 2 radio stations, so they were essentially really small businesses, And I remember one day James Brown had a station in Augusta called WRDW.
James Brown?
James Brown. James Brown had about 5 stations. He had one in Baltimore, I remember, where the tower was out in the ocean for the saltwater ground conductivity. So he had a full-time AM. Every week there was a new pick to click. And it was always a James Brown song. It was like, here's a new up-and-coming song, Popcorn. And it was Mother Popcorn, son of Mother Popcorn. One day I'm in the lobby at WAUG, and the door opens, and James Brown walks in. And I'm like going, holy cow, that's James Brown, right? And he comes in, he goes, I want to talk to your owner because I want to swap my full-time AM for your daytime AM and your full-time FM. So he thought the full-time AM would be more valuable to our owner, so he was going to put one over on him and get the FM, And I said, well, you got to talk to the owner. He goes, okay. And he turned around and walked out. And I'm like, what just happened? Right? It was wild, man.
When you say full-time AM, more valuable than FM, that's interesting history. Just tell us.
Yeah, that was 1972. So, there was a big FM in Augusta called WBBQ. And there was us, WAUG. But FM hadn't really taken over from AM yet. And that started really happening in the mid-'70s. It was like 4 or 5 years later. But James, he saw where that was going. He knew what was going to happen. So he was going to come in and get that FM and give us his AM. It never happened. But
it's so interesting. People nowadays, unless they lived in that generation, just don't realize what strategic thinking was about AM, FM, and the stations and how all of that evolved, particularly during the 70s and 80s.
Well, you know what, Dave? It's interesting because as I was coming up, and I was in the younger generation, so I kind of knew that FM was going to happen. But a lot of these guys that came up on big AM stations, they were like some people are today. They were like, FM. It's kind of like some people are streaming, Spotify, forget. But, they didn't see it coming, and I always thought, I never want to be that guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. So, Deborah, you are a sophomore. You're on you just did one guest shot
no.
Okay, so
I got my own show then after that. And then after graduation, I moved back to Minneapolis, and I thought, God, that was so much fun, but now I got to get a real job, And, my parents paid, all this tuition, and I better, I can't do radio, for God's sake. But then I turned on the radio in Minneapolis, and I heard Karen Wong. I'm like, what? What? A woman in Minneapolis on the radio doing her own show? And then I thought, oh, man, I got to at least try. So I walked over, and I got a little part-time job on a station called WLOL.
Wow. That's
and it was owned
amazing.
by Emmis Broadcasting. Mm-hmm. And so I did this full-time job with a briefcase during the day in sales, thinking I was doing the right thing by my parents. I hated it. And then one day, the guy who was in charge of the sales company sat us all down and he said, okay, the vice president of our company just had a heart attack in Los Angeles, and he is no longer with us.
Wow.
He said, who in this room, and there were like 12 of us, would like to go to Los Angeles and be the VP? One hand went up.
One hand went up?
And that was mine.
Wow.
Yeah.
Why didn't all the hands shoot up?
Because they're from Minnesota, and they had families and dogs, and they love lakes.
And nobody wants to live in L.A., David. Did you know that?
Yeah, they thought
Actually,
it was...
that's kind of a silly question because that's true. A lot of people would not want to live.
Yeah.
Most people do
LA,
not want to live here.
I
Yes.
gotcha.
No.
That's right.
And so I said, tomorrow, I'm there. And so I packed up. I moved to L.A. I became a vice president just, because. And I had a secretary, and our office was in the Hollywood Hills and all. It was
It's
just
incredible.
ridiculous. But I still hated my job.
Right.
So I thought, well, Emmis has a radio station in L.A., and it was Magic 106
Wow.
with Robert W. Morgan.
Sure.
And so I thought, I have a little connection because I am an Emmis employee, or was as of yesterday. And I went in, sure enough, they needed a warm body on weekends. So I went in there just as Magic 106 was becoming Power 106.
Wow.
And they said, which is the first Churban radio station in America. Churban was the term back then.
And Churban means?
Sort of contemporary hits meets urban music.
Okay.
So they said, well, Deborah, it's been great. I was doing nights on Magic 106 on the weekends, and then they made the switch to Power 106, and they said, honey, you are the wrong color. And I said, but I'm a warm body. I know how to run the board. You're not fully staffed. And as a matter of fact, you haven't hired anybody. So if you need a body in this chair just to not screw it up, I won't say much, but just hang on to me as a utility person. And so they did.
Wow.
And so I got to do weekends on Power 106.
That is amazing.
Which
Talk
was
about chutzpah.
Insane.
Wow.
And then I got nights at Power 106, 6 to 10. But I was still doing my full-time job, and it was just too much. I got sick. It was literally a 14-hour day every day. Mm-hmm. And so then I said, I got to make a decision here. So just at that time, Power 106 became a powerhouse. It went from, you've heard this, worst to first.
Right.
Right? And so they said, we're going to do this in New York. And we need somebody to go out there and train the other jocks how to do it. I'm like, oh, thank God. So I said, I know how to do it. I can train the other guys. So they moved me to New York, and it was a station called Hot 103.5, which is now Hot 97. So it was dance music. So I'm in New York, dance music, Vogue, Madonna, Andy Warhol. It was insane. It was incredible.
So you both have really had these remarkable origin stories and these great starts to your career. Was there a before and after moment that you recall when you knew that not only did you want to do this for a living, but you could do it for a living and then it was going to turn into a career?
Well, I was a kid under the pillow in Macon, Georgia. I was listening to WLS out of Chicago. So, I love good radio. But I think it was when I got married, and I got married when I was 19. I said, I got to have a job.
Wow.
I got to drop the music thing. I got to go down. I have a standing offer to go to this radio station. I'm going to go do that. And so that's when I said, and then I got into it. It's like, I hear these guys that are so good. And it's like, can I do that? And I never had a supreme amount of confidence that I could really be a great jock. So then I got into programming, and I programmed several stations. But I think it was when I heard Scott Shannon doing the Morning Zoo in New York, and I said, this guy's a good jock. He's not a great morning guy, but he knows how to build an ensemble around himself. And I said, I could do that. So I was very inspired by Scott to become a full-time morning personality.
And he's killing it. He is killing it. Every single ratings book.
Number one.
Yeah.
And what about you?
Well, I think when I thought, wow, maybe I could really do this was after I got to New York, because I never believed still that I could do it as a job.
Right.
I said, if I make it a year in New York, then I can go home to L.A. and, not with my tail between my legs, go shrinking home. So
were your parents supporting you at this time? I mean,
yeah,
emotionally,
they
were they behind the choice?
They were freaked out that I was playing Snoop Dogg for a living, but yeah, why not? And after a year, it became 2, and then 10, and then 23. I was in New York for 23 years, and I just kept switching radio stations. As my life arced, I went from Hot 97 playing hip-hop to Kiss FM, which was playing all soul music. I followed Isaac Hayes in the morning, and then Ashford and Simpson came in after me.
Oh, my God, I forgot about Isaac Hayes doing mornings there. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was every morning I got in there, and I got a hug from Chef. That's how I started my day. It was nuts. And then Ashford and Simpson would come in, and they were the most pleasant, delightful people. And
they were beautiful people.
And Nick Ashford owned this bar called the Sugar Bar. Mm-hmm. And so after work, we'd go down there. And their friends, Luther and Nile Rodgers and all these people would just show up. It was insane.
So you both have talked about morning shows. How do you stay coherent in the morning? How do you get up at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, whenever it is that you do get up, get ready, and then help to wake everyone else up?
Yeah, you shift your body clock, I think, over time, but you never really get used to it. Because when you're on vacation, I mean, I'll wake up the first day at 4, then at 5, then at 8. You know, it's like my body's going, please help. So I don't think you ever totally get used to it. But if you make that your focus of your day, and for me, I like to walk into the studio because I prep a lot the night before. So I like to walk in the studio right before I hit that mic switch. I don't want to sit around and get cold, you know. I mean, it's kind of like get into the office vibe. Walk right in, boom. You're on the air, you're projecting a lot of energy, and then you just go from there. You hit the ground running.
Gary mentioned that he preps the night before. Do you do a lot of prep before you get into the booth?
I think life is prep, right? You're at home, you're watching the Grammys.
You're
that's
having
prep.
a life.
Yeah,
that's your prep.
Yeah, and you make a little note that, I'm going to use this tomorrow. Or something happens on the way to work, and I go, that is so good. Yeah. I'm using that. So I think life is prep. I'm like you. I don't want to sit in the jock lounge and do an hour and a half of prep and then feel stale by the time I get on the air.
Right. Yeah, you want it to be exciting when you walk in the studio.
And spontaneous.
Well, I think that there's something about a broadcast radio station that is just unlike anywhere else that you could ever do voice work. Am I right? Mm-hmm. I mean, it's just, there's something like what we're doing right now is great, but if we were doing this on the air, the energy level would be about 50% higher.
Why is that?
It's the intensity of the performance. It's the crisis to perform, because it's like, I don't know about you, but the first time I opened a mic, I almost had a heart attack because I realized, boom, this is it. I'm on. I just got to say something. Right?
Yeah.
And so you're not in a situation where you can fix it later, you can do anything about it. So when you get a guest in there and they hit that energy level on the morning show, they go, whoa, it's like a huge lift. And you can't duplicate that anywhere outside of broadcast.
Have both of you done most of your work where you are the one host and you're either on your own or you're one-on-one, or have you been part of an ensemble, and do you have a preference?
I've never had a co-host.
Huh.
Never.
Have you ever wanted one?
Yeah. I mean, sure. But like today, I almost had one because George Clinton called in. So yeah, I'll take him as my co-host any day.
Did he just call randomly?
He called because he's doing a show, at the Greek this weekend. And last week it was Common. So pinch me. I'm making money, Mom and Dad. God bless you. Rest in peace, doing this thing called radio. And it's still really fun. Right. Everybody says, radio, which is not what it used to. Are you kidding me? I'm having the time of my life.
Right. Yeah, here in L.A. I have a co-host, Lisa Stanley. I have a producer. It's much easier to do a morning show and have a conversation when you have somebody to talk to. Right. And then we take a lot of phone calls. So if Lisa's not there, I lean on the phone calls for conversation. When I prep, I write a prep sheet that is syndicated called Radio Genius Show Prep. And that goes out to a lot of people. So I spend an hour and a half every night writing jokes, getting attitude on stories, looking for angles on things, and a way into a story so I can talk about it the next day. Something unexpected you might say about Meghan Markle or, whatever the story is in the news.
What's trending?
Yeah, what's trending. Yeah.
So, Gary, I know that you're a part of an ensemble. Do you prefer being a part of a group? And is that always the case, or have you ever done this on your own?
I was a jock for a long time, doing middays and nights, at KYA in San Francisco, WMET in Chicago. I won't go down the whole resume. It's too sad. But but morning shows that I've done probably for 25 years of my career is multiple people. The Morning Zoo in New York, because I replaced Scott Shannon back in 1990. And there were 12 people working on that show.
Is that right?
That was too much.
Yeah.
And it was me and Ross Britton, a guy that did a character called Mr. Leonard, Jonathan B. Bell, Michael Pelka, Valerie Seagraves, and everybody wanted a piece of the action. So I was sort of the ringmaster. So I had to bring everybody in to the action. It got Adam Curry from MTV. He was remember him? He was on with us. The thing that we have now at K-Earth with me and Lisa and Brandon, the producer, is in the studio, so he chimes in once in a while. That's perfect. Right. There's no room for anybody else.
You both have referred to broadcast radio as having something that is distinguished and a little magical about it. And we are now in an era where all the platforms for quote-unquote radio are changing. So we have Sirius XM, we have streaming, and I'll throw podcasts in there. How has that changed the way that you think about yourself as a host, as a personality? And do you like it?
It hasn't changed me at all. My singular focus is who's listening, what do they want to hear, don't annoy them, lift them up. That's it. I'm not thinking about social media. I'm not thinking about how is this going to play, with corporate. It's just focus like a laser beam. Think and look in your mind. Who's listening? They're on the road. Maybe they had a crappy day at work. How are you going to make them feel better? That's it.
And does that mean that the company allows you to maintain that as your base work as opposed to asking you to think differently about it or asking you to do additional things as part of your role? Have you ever had to struggle with that?
The new things are podcasts and social media. And yeah, they encourage us to do that. However, we've always had live appearances, right, since day one of radio. So that's not new. Yeah, the other stuff is just part of it. You got to play the game. Everyone else is. So, that's not an unreasonable thing for your company to ask you to just participate in, because if I don't do it, everybody else is, and we're going to lose.
I think a lot of these companies are wondering, why do we need music jocks? Why not just play the music? Because what does the jock bring to the table? And I think that's something that Deborah and everybody at The Wave and the people at K-Earth sort of exemplify, and that is the added value of having somebody who knows how to drive a music format that brings an extra excitement to the format, that sells the format to the audience and provides a companionship along with the music. If you know how to do it without breaking the music flow and how to, like you say, you're congruent with the music, like you sound like you belong on The Wave with that music. I sound like I belong on K-Earth with that music. And so that brings an added value to it that you don't get just by segueing the music. And part of the radio thing is companionship. And I think it's really important for these companies that have these radio stations in medium markets to groom people to be on the air, people who really want to have the excitement, the joy of being a disc jockey and bringing that vibe to the audience, because that adds so much to the vibe of the radio station. And it really does make a difference in terms of advertisers and listeners. And so when they start cutting that, I think it diminishes the medium. I've been in radio a long time. Ever since I've been in radio, radio is dying. At first it was TV was going to kill it.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's why they invented color radio, because they thought they'd compete with color TV. Remember that?
Yeah.
There was always something that was killing radio.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing now. But they lose sight of what the singular thing that broadcast radio is completely different from podcast and streaming. It's a totally different medium. And it's totally different disciplines. And I think we're in danger of losing that.
The other duties, for example, I'll just give you my day. Mm-hmm. My shift is from noon to 6. Within that 6 hours, I did not have a nanosecond. I don't have a board up. I don't have a kid answering the phones. It's just me. So I get in there. I got to arrange the music. I have to figure out something interesting to say 4 or 5 times an hour. I have to do contests, which means answer the phones, take the information, edit the contest, make sure it sounds good and presentable, pick the right music bed so it sounds great. I'm doing that. Then, can you voice this promo for the weekend? We're giving away Disney tickets. Sure. Voice the promo, make sure it's exactly the right length, produce it, send that to production. Then there are the testimonials. Some of them are live, some of them are pre-recorded, and they're daily. So I did 3 testimonial spots as well on the air today. And then George Clinton called in. Well, I don't have a producer to take the call, or I called him. We talked, I edited it, and it slapped it on the air a couple minutes later. And I don't have a nanosecond in 6 hours. So if you're going to cut jocks, think of what you're losing besides that person saying 94.7 The Wave between songs.
And you're cutting a veteran who can do all of these things. Like, we have 3 people basically on our show and a phone op. We sound like 12 people, right? Because we know how to do it, and we make it sound easy. But it's not easy. It's a product of a lot of years of doing this on the air. That's what makes us valuable employees. When you start cutting those people, you can't replace them these days because they're not grooming people in these smaller markets to come up. I mean, if I was a younger person in broadcasting, I would be a morning jock because someday, and it might not be that long, I'm going to drop dead. They're going to have to replace me. There won't be anybody out there. It's job security for us.
Yeah.
But it's a shame for the business that they're not grooming these younger people to come up in these positions. They're going to wind up really stuck.
It's really interesting because a lot more people nowadays at a young age are introduced to the audio business, either because they do listen to podcasts or through streaming, et cetera. If you were to give advice to someone who is thinking about getting into the business, what advice would you give them given your own origin experience and what you know about the business today?
Well, a lot of people say, and you get this all the time, I'm sure, everybody tells me I have a great voice and I should do radio. Well, it's a little more than that. And if you really want to do it, you got to know the animal that it is. All those duties that I just described, you have to be capable at doing that under pressure, under fire every day. So there is a pressure element to it, and yet you want it to sound really relaxed in my case. So, you have to have mental fortitude. You have to be able to move. You don't start in L.A. because you're born in L.A. You don't start in New York because you're born in New York. You got to move to little towns, Thompson, Georgia.
Right.
And, if it's really your calling, you'll do that.
Yeah, I think if you can come up through the ranks and you go out and, you're paid nothing, but you're basically getting on-the-job training.
Yeah.
So you get to go on a radio station and do a show, just like you said when you first started. You were thrilled to just crack a mic. And then when you really get into it, then you really have to start working your way up. And it was 5 years before I hit a major market, which is a pretty short time these days.
Yeah.
But back then it was such a dynamic business. I finally wound up in Cleveland in 1974, January 1st. We left Oceanside, California, my wife and I, and moved to Cleveland in the middle of an ice storm.
Wow.
And wound up there for 6 months. Station went to #1, and then Metro Media hired the entire staff to go to Chicago. So we were like, you're 22 years old, you're in Chicago, staying at the Ambassador East. Now, this is how poor all these guys were that were on the staff. We were all like 20, 21, 22 years old. One of the guys had a corduroy coat. And he was down in the lobby of the Ambassador, and they said, and he was staying in the hotel. And they called the cops on him, and they come in. He didn't have any money on him, and they arrested him for vagrancy. But, that was the thing. You could move very quickly back in those days, and you could do a lot of stuff, and it was just, it was thrilling.
I think everybody, though, these days could do a podcast from their home with a laptop, pair of headphones.
Sure.
They could interview their friends and get some experience that way.
Yeah.
Sure. It's very different, as both of you know, doing a hobby or a podcast and thinking about a career in radio or audio. You both are members of SAG-AFTRA. At what point in time did you decide that you needed to join a union, and what has that experience been like in terms of the difference that it makes for your career and your professional life?
Want me to take that?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So I joined in 1974 in Chicago, working for Metro Media. I had to join. So I've been in the union for how long is that? 45 years? Oh my God!
It's wild.
So anyway,
Who's counting?
then I had a couple of non-union jobs. I wound up at KYA in San Francisco, which was AFTRA, and this is what happened. Back in those days, we had board ops.
By ops, you mean operator.
Operators, right. Guys in another room, and you'd hit a dinger, and they'd hit the next thing. All we had was a mic switch. Big-time radio, we call it. BTR, big-time radio, right? So they did a deal for KFRC and KYA that we would lose our board ops. So we had a maximum 5-hour shift. We had all this stuff. And I think the union scale was $28,000 a year or something like that. It was in the mid-'70s. So a new company bought the station, King Broadcasting, and they came down from Seattle, and they said, look, we want you guys to go out after your shift and drive around in these prize cars and stop people with KYA stickers and give them prizes. I mean, I was one of 2 jocks left from the old staff, right? And I actually had the AFTRA contract with me. So we're in this meeting, and I held up the contract. And I said, I don't think we can do that under this contract. And everybody said, oh my God, you can't say that, And the program director said, look, I'm going to leave the room. If you guys all vote to supersede the contract, we can do that. So he leaves the room, and I said, you can't supersede the contract. I said, write in the contract that we cannot offer the company better terms, and they can't demand better. So everybody, this company is great, blah, blah, blah. So they all vote to supersede the contract. I leave the room. I call the union. And they said, well, that's insane. So like 2 days later, we have a full staff meeting in the building with management, and the union guy goes, you can't do this. I told the guys, I said, look, there's a lot of people that have worked here over the years that have gotten these terms. You don't just blow them off. That's crazy. So the bottom line, 2 weeks later, they fired me. And the union said, we'll fight for you to be reinstated, because you're fired for union activity. And I said, you know what, forget these people. I moved back up to Seattle. But it was an interesting experience, and it really showed me the value of collective bargaining and the union contract in terms of setting working conditions, because, one company may be great, the next company may be, they're going to come in and with these crazy ideas. So
interesting.
Yeah.
What about you?
In New York, the GM was really friendly with me all of a sudden. I'm like, why is she being so nice to me? I don't get it. Coffee and little girl chat and then one day it was like, you guys don't really need a union, do you? I'm like, oh, I see where this is going. And they want me to lead the charge. I'm like, no. I shudder to think, without the union, what we would have been working for in New York. I mean, even with the union, I was eating white bread and Hershey syrup sandwiches every night. It was just so poor, even on union, wages.
The union minimum wasn't even enough to live.
No, not New York.
Not New York.
So, yeah, I'm very, very grateful to SAG-AFTRA for, since 1986. They've got my back. And I really, really appreciate it.
You're eating better than white bread and syrup now, right?
I don't even want to look at a bottle of Hershey syrup.
All right, let's make sure that this is a promo for the union. No more white bread and syrup. Okay.
Absolutely.
We've had a recent podcast where we had voiceover artists who were in here, and they were talking about how they use their voice. And I'm very struck by the fact that the two of you as radio hosts, as radio personalities, your jobs and frankly your skill set are so dramatically different than what performers do. Have you ever thought about being a voiceover artist, and does it just seem so categorically different, or does it actually feel similar?
Well, if you walk in and you say, I work in radio, they usually escort you right back out the door because you're an announcer and you're not an actor. I tried one time in New York, and this cured me of wanting to be a voiceover actor. They needed a parrot for a Doritos commercial. And somebody said, man, you ought to go do that. You got a great voice, you do all kinds of funny stuff. And I said, well, let me go in. They said, okay, give us your, they said, goodbye.
Bye-bye now.
Next.
Really lovely.
I said, yeah. One thing that we do, like as morning jocks, that actors would not like to do, and that is we're like talk show hosts. So we get a story and we take a position, and then we have to defend it. Okay, so for example, tomorrow morning, we're talking about the Area 51, the people that are going to go out and storm Area 51.
Sure.
Yeah.
So my position is going to be, I don't believe there are any UFOs or extraterrestrials. And so we'll ask the audience, what do you think, right? So then you have that conversation. It's interesting. It's just entertainment.
Very.
But take a position, defend it, and you're like a talk show host,
Sure.
Well, I've been doing it for about 8 years. And the first thing I realized, like Gary did, is you have to beat the radio out of yourself. You have to unlearn everything you've learned for radio to do voiceovers in the modern world, because they don't want that. Every single spec on a sheet that comes to you as a voiceover artist is non-announcery. You don't want a radio person. It's like we are really persona non grata.
Yeah.
And so I've been taking coaching for the last 4 years to beat the radio out of me. And then I put on the other hat when I come into the radio station. But I've used that.
Did it help you in your radio?
Yeah,
I
I've
bet
really
it did.
used
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
I realized how old-fashioned I was starting to sound.
Right.
And I've changed that up.
Yeah, that's I've changed a lot at K-Earth. I've really dropped a lot of the old kind of boss radio type stuff.
Kind of shtick.
Kind of shticky, like a real Don Steele kind of, who I love, I think is fantastic.
Hello, everybody.
Yeah, hey, everybody.
It's so interesting that a skill set can migrate from one to the other, and to the outside world, it may look very similar, but in fact, it's very different.
Very different, yeah.
Well, we can't thank the two of you enough for coming in and sharing your stories and your insights with our members and with our audience.
All right, thank you.
Thanks to you, David, and thanks to SAG-AFTRA for all the years of having our back.
You better believe it, baby.
Yeah. Bye-bye.